They said it like it was kindness, that they were protecting me, that it was better this way. My daughter had that tone in her voice, the one she used when she thought I was being unreasonable. Like when I used to say she shouldn't wear crop tops to church. She looked at me gently, hand resting on mine, and said she'd just hold on to the keys for a little while. Just until things felt steadier. I hadn't said I felt unsteady. I hadn't said anything at all, really. I just sat there in the passenger seat of my own car, in the driveway of the house I'd paid off, feeling something inside me curl back into itself. The next morning, I checked the hook where the spare set used to hang, gone. Her husband is methodical. I imagine he took them down the moment I went to bed, as if I were a toddler who might wander into traffic. I opened the kitchen drawer where the old valet key used to be, behind the twist ties and tape rolls. Nothing. I didn't cry. I made myself coffee instead, though the filter tore and the grounds floated up like ash. They said it wasn't about control, that they were worried that I'd nearly driven through a stop sign the week before, that maybe it was time we talked. About other arrangements. Other arrangements. I nodded while something sank low in me. Like a stone pulled through a deep body of water. I was never the kind of mother who let the house fall into chaos. I folded their socks together when they were little, even the ones that didn't match. I made muffins for the bake sales. I wrote the thank you notes for them until they learned to do it themselves. Their friends stayed over for sleepovers, and I made pancakes in the shape of letters. When my husband died, I still set the table for 4. I told myself it would help keep the house from swallowing me whole. Years went by and they moved on. My daughter Elena had a wedding that cost more than our first house. I stood beside her in a silver dress that I never wore again. I smiled. Through it all, even when they made jokes about how I cried during the toasts, they called me sentimental. I let it be that, when my grandson was born, I rearranged my whole life around his nap schedule. I wasn't asked to, but it seemed right. I sat with him while Alina went to yoga, brought soup when they got the flu, paid for the emergency plumber when the pipes burst, and never asked to be repaid. They said I was a blessing, till I wasn't. There was a shift, quiet like a door closing softly down the hall. Suddenly, I was inconvenient. Not because I changed, but because I stayed the same, still making too much food, still asking questions, still calling at night because it felt lonely and I wanted to hear someone say goodnight. They said I should get a hobby, that I was too. Focused on them, that maybe I'd feel less anxious if I got a dog. I nodded. I watched them pull away like the tide, slowly and without apology. I found out what they'd done by accident. I was looking for my insurance papers, the folder in the bottom drawer of the old cherrywood desk. I never go in there unless I need something serious. But the air conditioner was making a strange sound, and I wanted to check the warranty. Under the file labeled Health, I saw another folder I didn't recognize. It had my name on it, just my name. Inside were copies. Notes from my doctor, a form from the DMV marked confidential, an unsigned letter to my bank. And then the hardest part, a draft of a power of attorney, dated 2 months back. I recognized the font from my son-in-law's office printer, and Elena's handwriting faint and neat in the margin, circling a clause about financial control. My mouth didn't open. My hands didn't shake. I just closed the folder slowly and placed it back where I found it. My heart made no sound. Not then. But that night I didn't sleep. And when I did, I dreamed of being pushed in a wheelchair down a long hallway with no doors. They hadn't even asked. They were preparing to erase me and call it safety. 2 days later, I stood in the kitchen and made a list. Not a tearful list, a calm one. My name, my accounts, my property deed. Passwords I hadn't updated. I checked them all. I made copies. I printed things in triplicate. I emailed myself files. I called the title office. I changed the voicemail pin. I called a lawyer I used to play bridge with, back when I still went to the senior center. He met. Me the next morning. His voice was kind, but he didn't say much. I liked that. I showed him everything. He nodded. He knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to be ready in case I couldn't manage. But I had been managing, just not in a way that fit their plans. I told him I wanted it all undone and protected. I didn't tell anyone. I just went about my business. The new documents came in a thick envelope. I signed every page with the same calm hand that used to braid Elena's hair before school. Then I called a taxi, not an Uber, a real taxi, one with a light on top and a driver who didn't ask questions. I packed 2 suitcases, one with clothes, one with documents, photographs, and a paperback I never got to finish. I didn't leave a note, just a voicemail to Elena's number. I said I'd be taking some space, that I was safe, and that I'd call when I felt like it. I haven't called since. They tried to find me, I know that much. I still had the old phone at first, and I saw the messages pile up. Where are you? This isn't like you. You're scaring us. Then anger after everything we've done. Then silence. Then more voicemails. Read through the transcription. Please come back. The baby misses you. This isn't fair, but none of it asked the right question. Not once did anyone say, what did we do? They called the neighbors. Someone even drove to the house and knocked. I'd asked the realtor to put up a for sale sign the day after I left. She said it got 3 offers in a week. I accepted the one that paid in cash. They don't know where the money went. That's fine with me. I kept a printout of my bank account in my new apartment drawer right next to the tea bags. Not because I'm afraid, but because I like to see it. Proof that I still exist. That I own something. The apartment is small, but it's mine. A 1-bedroom above a bakery. The windows smell like cinnamon most mornings. I walk to the post office. The clerk there smiles at me like I'm someone he recognizes. Maybe I remind him of someone he loved. Maybe I just look like I belong. I joined a reading group at the library. We don't talk much, just sip tea and share stories. One of the women there, Nadine, brought me soup when I had a cold. She didn't know me well, but she said I looked like someone who deserved warm things. We sit sometimes on the bench outside the laundromat. She tells me about her daughter who moved to Colorado. I don't talk about mine. I talk about the cake I baked last week or the bird I saw on the fire escape. We laugh about the tiny things no one here knows. I used to be someone's mother, or that someone took my keys and called it love. A letter came from Elena 2 weeks ago. It wasn't angry, just confused. She said they were scared, that they didn't mean to hurt me, that they thought they were helping. Think maybe we could talk? I sat with it in my lap for a long time. I read it twice. Then I made myself a cup of tea and placed the letter under my chair leg to steady it. Still wobbled. I didn't write back. I don't need to scream to be heard. I don't need to explain what it cost me to trust them. I only needed to know that I wasn't invisible. And I know that now. Yesterday, I walked down to the lake with a paper boat. I folded it from one of the old drafts of the power of attorney, the one with her handwriting in the margins. I set it in the water and watched it drift, soft and slow, till it sank. I whispered one thing as it disappeared. This time, I decide who gets to call me anything else. Before all this, I was the one they called first. For everything. When the baby wouldn't sleep. When the car battery died. When the dog swallowed a rubber band. I was their first ring on the phone tree, their safety net, their extra pair of hands, and I gave it gladly. That's the part I think they've forgotten. It wasn't obligation, was love. I used to think love meant staying, showing up, putting others ahead of yourself. Not just in the obvious ways, packing lunches, buying birthday presents, sewing the button back on my son-in-law's coat, but in the quiet ones too. Letting my daughter tell me how tired she was, even if I hadn't slept well either. Holding back opinions when I could see they weren't welcome. Laughing when they rolled their eyes at my stories. Being invisible when it made things easier for them. When Alina was little, she was wild in a way that made other mothers stare. She'd take off her shoes in the grocery store aisles and dance barefoot. Once she screamed at a stranger who complimented her curls because she didn't like being touched. I remember the shame that flushed through me in moments like that, but I always reached for her hand anyway. I never let go of her. She grew into herself over time, polished her edges, learned which parts of herself to tuck away in public. I thought it was growth. Now, I wonder if it was just the beginning of her learning how to make things easier by making them smaller. People, feelings, mothers. She went to college 2 states away. I cried in the parking lot when we left her there. Her father held my hand but didn't say anything. He didn't know what to do with my tears. She barely looked back. That should have told me something. But I wrote her letters every week anyway. She never answered, but she kept the stamps. When my husband passed, it was sudden. A Tuesday morning. I came downstairs to find the coffee had brewed, but he hadn't moved from the armchair. I remember touching his shoulder and knowing before I even saw his face that he was gone. The silence around him was too full. I called Alina first, and Michael. Neither answered. I left messages that felt too calm, like I'd already stepped outside myself to say them. Alina arrived 4 hours later. She brought an overnight bag but left it in the car. I remember thinking that was odd. As if she wasn't sure how long grief was supposed to take, she hugged me stiffly and asked if I'd eaten. I told her no. She reheated leftover chicken and sat across from me while I picked at it. She asked if I had the will. I told her I hadn't looked. She nodded like she expected that. She always expected me not to handle things. I don't know where that came from. After the funeral, everything got very quiet. I started keeping the TV on just for the sound. Game shows mostly. Their noise was less lonely than silence. Michael came by a few times to help with the garage, but he spent most of the time on the phone. Alina stopped by with the baby once or twice. The visits were short, and she always had somewhere else to be. I made an effort. Sunday dinners, voicemails, cookies on holidays. I didn't push. I let them lead. I told myself this was the way things were now. Children become adults and mothers become optional. But then came the hints. Little comments that I seemed forgetful, that I'd repeated myself. That maybe the oven should stay off unless someone was with me. I brushed it off. Who doesn't forget things? I was grieving, adjusting. Trying. Then, one day, Alina brought up assisted living. Not like a punishment, like a possibility. She said it casually, like she was just thinking aloud. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. She said it was only because they loved me, that they wanted to make sure I was safe. That she'd heard of a place where the walls were painted in calming colors and there was a garden path you could walk every day. I told her I had a garden path. She said it wasn't the same. That was the first time I saw it. The idea of me as a problem they were trying to solve. A gentle problem, but still something to be handled. I stopped inviting them to Sunday dinner after that, not out of anger. Just because it started to feel like hosting my own exit interview. Instead, I started baking smaller meals. Just enough for me. Little chicken, some roasted potatoes, a square of cornbread. Still made tea at night, but I drank it by the window and watched the street lights blink on. Some nights I didn't turn on any lights in the house at all. Just let the dusk seep in. It felt like I was slowly fading, one room at a time. Alina called less. When she did, she was always on speakerphone, her voice multitasking. Once, I heard her tell someone she was exhausted from trying to do everything for everyone. I wasn't even asking for anything. I was calling to say I'd seen the forsythia bloom early. They wanted me to shrink down, fit into their narrative of what aging should look like, to be grateful for the bits of attention they rationed out, to say thank you when they offered help I hadn't asked for, but I was still me. The woman who raised 2 kids on one income while my husband worked nights. The woman who handled the mortgage, made holiday costumes, nursed fevers, held their secrets, and swallowed her own. And I didn't forget who I was, not for 1 second. That's what made it hurt more. Knowing that they didn't take my keys because I was failing. They took them because I was still standing, and standing to them had started to look inconvenient. It was a Sunday, the kind where the sky hangs low and quiet, heavy with clouds that never quite turn to rain. I had the chicken thawing in the sink. I wasn't expecting anyone, but cooking made the house feel full. A ritual, like winding a clock that no one listens to anymore. The mail was late, as it often was. And I didn't think much of the man in the vest dropping it off until I saw the thick white envelope. My name neatly typed, no return address. The paper felt stiff, official, not a card, not a flyer. I opened it at the kitchen table with my thumb sliced through the seal like it might bite me. Inside were pages, printed forms, some highlighted in yellow. My name appeared over and over. And beneath the telonas there were terms I recognized from those years when my husband and I drafted our wills. Durable authority. Decision-making capacity. Financial oversight. I read it all twice. Didn't say I was incompetent. It didn't say I'd done anything wrong. But it was a quiet preparation for both of those things. A petition to authorize her to speak in my name, make decisions in my stead, sign where I could not. I wasn't angry at first, just stunned. I set the pages down beside the salt shaker and stared out the window at nothing. The street was empty, the world unchanged. Birds still hopped along the sidewalk, pecking at crumbs someone else had left behind. I thought of all the things I'd done for her without paperwork. All the times I'd driven across town with soup, all the bills I'd paid without asking for thanks. I thought of the hours I'd spent listening when she called crying, and she needed me, when I was the only one who could calm her down. I never asked for control. I never needed proof of love. It wasn't just the forms. It was the signature. Hers clean, practiced, deliberate. I imagined her sitting at a desk, probably in their kitchen while her husband watched the news. I pictured her filling in my name on a line she'd chosen, choosing for me without me. Like I was already gone. I checked the envelope again. There was a cover letter, polite, pre-written, from a law office I'd never heard of. It said they'd be happy to schedule a time to discuss next steps. It said the goal was my comfort and safety. That phrase again. I called no one. I didn't confront her. I didn't cry or demand answers or beg to be seen. Instead, I stood up slowly and went to the drawer under the telephone. The old address book was still there, tucked behind the takeout menus. I flipped past the names of friends who had moved away or passed or simply stopped calling. I found what I was looking for. A lawyer's number written in blue ink, with a little star beside it. Evelyn Price. We'd gone to the same book club once, years ago. She specialized in elder care law. And she'd spoken once about how easily things could be taken from people who didn't ask enough questions. I dialed and left a message. I said I needed to meet. I said I wasn't in trouble. Not yet. That night, I didn't sleep. I left the envelope on the table unopened again, like maybe the contents would change if I looked at them with enough disbelief. But they stayed the same. My name rewritten. My future edited in someone else's handwriting. I tried to remember if there had been any warnings, any signs I'd missed. The truth is, I'd seen them. I'd just hoped I was wrong. I remembered. Last month when Alina mentioned that I shouldn't be driving so much. When she asked casually if I still remembered where I kept the emergency flashlight. When she laughed nervously and said I'd told her the same story twice. I remembered her husband asking if I'd considered putting my bills on autopay. You? No, just in case. Each comment had been framed in care. Not concern, control. I knew better than to argue. I knew that trying to defend your own mind only makes you look more fragile. They were laying bricks, quietly, one at a time, building a version of me that looked lost so they could step in, so they could feel righteous, so they could say they were protecting me while slowly taking things away. I walked through my house that night, room by room, touched each thing I had chosen. The curtains in the dining room, I hemmed myself. The chair in the den where I read. Each afternoon, it's a photo on the mantel of Alina as a baby, her face full of jelly and joy. I looked at them all and wondered how many days I had left before they'd come for those too. At midnight, I opened my computer. I logged into my accounts, I changed passwords, I printed out balances, I organized the folders, I checked the deed. Right? I checked the insurance. I wrote down every name I could think of accountants, brokers, even the plumber who'd fixed the sink last spring. They wanted my life to look like it needed caretaking. I decided to make it look the opposite. In the morning, I called Evelyn again. She picked up this time. Her voice was steady, warm. I told her I had documents I needed her to look over. She said to come in at 2. I didn't call Alina. I didn't need to. Something in me had already shifted. Could feel it. Like a door I didn't know had been open was now. Slowly swinging shut. Quietly. Gently. But it would close all the same. I set the envelope in my purse, wrapped in an old scarf. Not because I was hiding it, because I was reclaiming it. My name. My choices. My proof. They thought they'd get ahead of the moment I might fail. Instead, they created the moment I decided never to let them try. I used to think there would be some grand moment. Some thunderclap of betrayal. A screaming match, maybe. Slammed door. But that's not how it happened. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that settles in your bones. The kind where you realize the people you love have already moved on from you. And you're the only one who didn't notice. The papers weren't the betrayal. The betrayal was everything they thought I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't know how to read legal language. That I wouldn't piece together the timing, the intentions, the slow erosion of my name from my own life. I didn't tell anyone I was going to see Evelyn. I sat in the waiting room of her office in my best coat, the one with the deep inside pocket. The receptionist offered me water, and I said yes, even though I wasn't thirsty. It gave me something to hold. When Evelyn called me in, she didn't look surprised to see me. She looked like someone who'd seen it before. She offered me the chair across from her desk. I handed her the envelope, already opened, already read, already burned into memory. She glanced through the papers quickly, her eyebrows tightening slightly at the margins. She asked if I had a current power of attorney already in place. I nodded and said I did, from when my husband passed. She asked who I'd named. I said no. One, I'd left it blank then, thinking I'd fill it in later. Thinking I had time. Thinking my children would never do what they were now doing. She asked if I wanted to revoke any pending applications. I said yes, and I want to make sure they can't try again. She didn't blink. She started drafting. It felt strange, watching. Her type my name onto documents meant to protect me from the people who share my face, my laugh, my childhood memories. But I didn't stop her. I signed everything with a steady hand. There was no shaking, no drama. Just a pen on paper, carving a boundary I should have drawn years ago. Afterwards, I went to a little cafe down the street, ordered a tea and a scone, sat at a table by the window and looked out at the world. Everyone walking by looked busy, important, headed somewhere. I sipped my tea slowly. I let myself feel the weight of what I'd just done. It didn't feel like rebellion. It felt like rescue. Not from them. It's from the version of me I'd been pretending to be for too long. At home, I opened the hall closet and started packing. Not in panic, in preparation, one suitcase for clothes. One for the things I could not leave behind. The deed, my journals. A few photos, not many. The one of me at 23, smiling in front of the bookstore, stayed. But the framed family portrait from Elena's wedding went into the back of the drawer. Didn't want to see it anymore. I thought about where I might go. Not far, just far enough to be out of reach. A motel, maybe? Something simple, quiet, a place with a lock on. The door and a window that lets in the morning light. I wrote down a list. I always make lists when I'm unsure. They help me feel steady. Bank. Call and update contact details. Title office, confirm transfer, and re-record if needed. Phone account, change passwords. Utilities, forward mail, canceled trash pickup. Will update and file with Evelyn. I packed my medicine, my slippers, the blue notebook with the stiff cover. I didn't pack anything sentimental, no teacups, no quilts. I wanted nothing that could be used to lure me back. On the third night, I turned my phone off, not silence off. I let it rest on the nightstand, screen black, a soft symbol. I no longer needed to be reachable at all hours. Not for them. The old part of me still whispered, what if they worry? What if they don't understand? But I'd already answered that. They don't worry about me. They worry about losing their narrative, about looking like the bad ones, about not being able to say we did it for her. She was confused. She needed help. But I wasn't confused. I was ignored. That's different. And now I was done being available for their version of things. I took out a yellow pad and wrote something at the top. Not for them, for me. My name is still mine. My decisions are still mine. I was not erased. I walked away. I read it aloud to myself once, softly. The words made the walls feel closer, like the house was listening, like it understood. I went to bed early that night. No news, no sound. Just the weight of blankets and the strange comfort of solitude. I slept through without waking for the first time in months. When I woke, I made toast and folded the towels. I stared out the window and thought of nothing in particular. The trees looked sharper, more defined. The edges of everything clearer. That afternoon, I opened the drawer where the house key used to sit. It's empty. I already knew that. But I reached in anyway and left a note in its place. I kept the lock. You just never noticed. Then I closed the drawer for good. I didn't leave in the dead of night. I left in the soft, slow stillness of morning when everything looks like it's about to begin again. That was the only way it felt right. No drama, no notes on the counter. No suitcases rolled down the driveway. Just a quiet door closed behind me, a lock turned, a life gently released from its hinges. I wore the coat with the deep pockets. It was cool for early spring, and the air smelled like the world had just been washed. My suitcase stood by the front. Door upright and unbothered, like it had been waiting for me to remember it had wheels. I called the taxi the night before, not a ride share. Didn't want an app to trace me. Just a real number I found in the phone book that hadn't been updated since. 2017. The man who answered didn't ask many questions. I liked that. He said he could be there at 8 a.m. sharp. He was. The moment I stepped into the cab, I felt it. It's a kind of lightness I hadn't known I was allowed to feel. As if something I'd been carrying for years had quietly dropped behind me. And I didn't even need to turn back to see it lying there. I watched the house fade in the rearview mirror. No final look. No whispered goodbye. It had been a home. It had also been a trap. Not the place itself, but what had grown around it. The expectations. The judgments. The endless little ways I was expected to give without asking for anything in return. The driver made small talk, but I only answered in pieces. Where are you headed, ma'am? I told him the name of the motel one I found on page 4 of the search results, the kind of place with weekly rates and curtains that don't quite meet in the middle. He nodded and said nothing more. The motel was just outside of town. Set back from the road behind a tire shop and a liquor store with flickering signage. It wasn't pretty, but it was clean. That was all I needed. Clean sheets, a working door, lock, and no one who knew my name. I checked in with cash. The man at the front desk didn't flinch. He handed me the key card and told me there was free coffee until noon. I said thank you, like it was the first word I'd spoken in weeks. Room 107 had thin walls and humming pipes. The lamp was crooked, the shower dripped, and the carpet had the shape of someone else's footprints. Still, it felt like mine. I pulled. The curtains closed and sat on the edge of the bed. The TV was bolted to the dresser as if they were afraid it might run away. I understood the feeling. I opened my suitcase and took out the folder Evelyn had prepared. Inside, new documents. All properly stamped, power of attorney revoked. Medical proxy reassigned. Living will updated. Bank forms notarized. Each paper felt like a key, not to the past, but to myself. I laid them out on the bedspread like puzzle pieces. Not to solve anything, but to remind myself that I hadn't imagined what had been taken from me, or how I'd taken it back. I didn't cry. I haven't cried since that day at the kitchen table with the envelope. Not because I haven't felt sorrow, but because the part of me that used to need their approval, their love on their terms, their version of kindness, that part had already died. And grief doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it's just silence, pressed into your skin like an old bruise. I plugged in the phone I'd bought the day before. New number. No shared plan. No shared access. No way back in. One transferred. What I needed, contacts for the lawyer, the bank, the title office. Not a single family member. Not even Alina. The next morning, I walked to the UPS store and opened a new P.O. box. I asked for the smallest size. The man behind the counter handed me 2 keys. I held them in my palm for a moment longer than I needed to. I'd lost keys. Had them taken, even... But these were mine. Back at the motel, I cooked oatmeal in the microwave and sat on the windowsill while it cooled. The parking lot below was empty except for a man washing his pickup with a bucket and a rag. A radio played somewhere, muffled. By walls, maybe 2 rooms over. There was a peace in the blandness of it all. No framed family portraits. No voices behind closed doors deciding what to do with me. No pretending. I sat with my notebook and made a new list. Not tasks, not reminders, just truths. I am not a burden. I am not confused. I am not theirs to manage. I am not lost. I am not finished. I traced each word slowly, like they were something sacred. That afternoon, I deleted Elena's voicemail. She had called once that morning. Then again, she said she'd stopped by the house and it was locked. That the neighbors hadn't seen me. That she was getting worried. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the window an inch and let the motel air drift in. Smelled like dryer sheets and gasoline. Not exactly fresh, but free. And that was enough. I didn't leave because I was old, or sick, or scared. I left because I was finally ready to live without waiting for someone else to give me permission. Because sometimes reclaiming your life means disappearing just enough to be seen again. By yourself. The silence lasted 2 days. I turned the new phone off at night and left it face down during the day. I didn't check anything. No messages, no calls, no news. I let the quiet wrap around me like a blanket. I didn't want to hear the version of the story they'd started telling. But on the 3rd morning, I turned the phone on. Not because I missed them. It's because I wanted to know how far the panic had spread. 17 voicemails. Elena's voice was in every one. Shaky, high-pitched, urgent, in the way only someone who's used to being in control sounds when they realize they've lost it. Hi, Mom. Just checking in again. Went by the house this morning and it was locked. I thought maybe you were out, but I don't know. Call me, okay? K. Next message, 3 hours later. This isn't like you. I mean, no, we've had some tension. Lately, but disappearing. What are you trying to prove? Then, later that evening, her voice cracked a little. You're scaring me. Seriously? I called Michael, and we don't know where you are. I thought maybe you went to visit Aunt Renee, but she hasn't seen you. Did something happen? There was a pause in that one. Long enough that I could almost hear her thinking. We're just trying to help. You know that, right? The words fell flat. Like she was rehearsing something. Trying it out loud to see if it still sounded true. I didn't call her back. I scrolled through the text messages. At first, they were calm, polite, concerned. Where are you? Can you check in? Just send a text. To let me know you're okay. Then they shifted. Mom, we're getting worried. If you don't answer soon, we'll have to involve the police. Are you having a breakdown? That one made me pause. The audacity of it. It's as if my leaving could only be explained by mental failure, not by a clear-eyed decision to escape. I could see them spinning, gathering theories, assigning blame. I pictured Michael combing through the accounts, discovering he no longer had access. His frustration measured not in guilt, but in inconvenience. I pictured Alina pacing the kitchen, her hands fluttering the way they do when she's unraveling, voice getting thinner each time she tells herself, this isn't her fault. They didn't want me. Not really, not as I was. They wanted a version of me they could mold, contain, sign for. They called it love, but love doesn't come with stipulations and fine print. Love doesn't fill out forms behind your back. That evening, Alina posted a photo of me on her social media. An old one, me holding my grandson at his second birthday. My smile too wide, my eyes tired but happy. The caption said, if anyone has seen my mother, please contact me. We're worried. She's been struggling. I stared at the word. Struggling. That was the story now. That I'd wandered off. That I was fragile. That my disappearance was a symptom, not a choice. The comments poured in. People offering prayers, suggestions, sympathy. Some posted memories of me Sunday lunches, school bake sales, the time I sewed costumes for the class play. They painted a portrait of a woman who had given everything and now had simply vanished. A few asked questions, gently. Had she been sick? Was she depressed? Lena didn't answer those ones. She kept control of the narrative, as always. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I watched the panic bloom from a distance. I sipped tea from a motel paper cup while they scrambled to fill the absence I had left. They had expected me to sit quietly and accept what they'd decided. That's the thing about control, it always looks like care until it's taken away. I left the post open on my phone for a while, rereading it like a foreign headline. I imagined someone from the motel scrolling past and not recognizing me at all, just a name, a face, a cautionary tale about a lost old woman who needed saving. But I wasn't lost. I had just stopped being found on their terms later that night. I walked down to the front desk and asked if there was any mail. The clerk handed me a small envelope. No return address, but the handwriting was Elena's. She must have gotten the P.O. box from the legal filings. Smart, predictable dot inside was a short note, scribbled on stationery I recognized from her kitchen drawer. Mom, please come back. At least, let us see you. This isn't fair. We're doing our best. You can't just disappear like this. Alana, no apology. No acknowledgement. Just more of the same, her voice, her needs, her lens. I folded the note and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't tear it, didn't throw it away, just slid it into the drawer beside the motel Bible and closed it. Let her wonder what it meant. The next day, Michael sent an email to the lawyer. I saw the forwarded message from Evelyn, clipped and formal. He had questions, legal ones, about what had been changed. Why he was no longer listed as financial proxy. Why she, my daughter, hadn't been consulted. Evelyn replied with a single sentence. All documents were updated voluntarily and with full capacity. That's what they hadn't counted on. That I wasn't too late. That I saw the whole thing clearly. That I was willing to leave before they took the last piece of me and called it protection. Now I wake up to the hum of the motel ice machine. Not to anyone's expectations. No one asks what I need unless they actually mean it. No. One checks the clock when I speak. Let them post. Let them worry. Let them spin stories about decline, confusion, heartbreak. Let them panic. I'm not coming undone. I'm just not coming back. I don't count the days. I let them pass like slow-moving clouds, light, unremarkable, and mine. The motel manager offered me a long-term rate after the first week, and I said yes, without hesitation. I didn't need marble countertops or soft closed drawers. I needed stillness, and doors that only opened when I said so. Most mornings I walk to the corner cafe where they sell burnt coffee and perfect scones. No one knows my name, which is a kind of freedom I didn't know I missed. The barista, a young man with a heart-shaped face and arms full of ink, always says, "Hey, like I belong here." He doesn't know I'm someone's mother, or that I used to hold a whole family together with. The quiet grip of my routines. He just knows I like my coffee with cream and that I tip well. There's a laundromat across from the cafe with a row of plastic chairs that no one ever sits in. I sit there sometimes just to feel the sun. I bring a paperback I picked up from the used bookstore downtown. No one rushes me. No one checks my expression for signs of decline. I read slowly, and if I forget what page I was on, I simply start again. No one calls that confusion out here. They just call it rereading. The motel room is small, but I've made it mine. I put up a postcard from the lake, a calendar from the pharmacy, and a cheap little plant from the dollar store that doesn't need much light or water, just like me, I suppose. I keep my folder of papers in the drawer under the television. Every few days, I open it. Not to check for errors, it's just to remind myself, I chose this. No one chose it for me. Sometimes I see other women like me, older, alone, but not broken. Of them is named Nadine. We met at the library. I'd gone in to ask about a printer, and she was already arguing with the librarian about late fees. She turned to me, rolled her eyes, and said, "Some people think you forget everything just because. Your hair's gone white." I laughed. It felt like the first real sound I'd made in days. We started meeting once a week after that, just for tea. No expectations, no pity. She tells me about her daughter who lives in Oregon and only calls on holidays. I tell her about my plant and how it leans toward the window like it's trying to leave too. We don't press, we just sit. It's more than enough. The found family they talk about in books isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just the woman who holds the door open for you every Tuesday. It's the teenager at the checkout who double bags your milk without being asked. The neighbor who doesn't ask why you're here or how long you're staying. Just nods at you from the vending machine like you've always existed. There's peace in the anonymity, in not being mother or patient or responsibility, in being no one but myself. I thought I would miss the noise of family. I don't. I miss the version of family I thought I had. The one where love doesn't turn into permission slips and proxy signatures. It's the one where checking on someone doesn't mean locking them out of their own life. But that version never existed. It was something I built in my head to survive the version I was given. Now, I build new things. I started journaling again, just a few lines every night before bed. I don't write about the past. I don't write about what they did. I write about small things, the sound the ice made in my glass, the way the sky looked before the storm, the ache in my knees that lets me know I've lived long enough to earn it. No one reads these pages but me, and I don't have to explain anything. Some nights, I sit outside my door in the plastic chair I bought from the gas station down the road. The breeze carries the scent of oil and fried food, and something faintly sweet I haven't yet placed. I like it. It smells like life continuing without ceremony. Once last week, a little girl staying in the room next to mine offered me a dandelion. She didn't say a word, just held it out, small fist wrapped tight around the stem, and waited. I took it and nodded. She grinned and skipped away. I pressed the flower into my notebook. It's drying there now, flat and golden. I haven't decided what it means. It's only that I wanted to keep it. There's something deeply powerful about being forgotten and still surviving. About waking up without anyone expecting anything from you and still choosing to get out of bed, to make tea, to fold your clothes, to watch the world move and say, I am still here. I don't need their calls anymore. I don't scroll through the old messages. I deleted the app that let them track my location. They never asked for permission before using it. They called it safety. I call it surveillance. Let them wonder where. I've gone to a place where the mirrors don't reflect the roles I used to fill. Only the face I've learned to see clearly. A face that still holds softness, still holds strength. I have not disappeared. I have arrived, and here. In this small room above a faded parking lot, I have found something I didn't know I was missing. Peace without apology. I saw her before she saw me. It was a Wednesday. I'd walked down to the post office to pick up a small package new socks. Of all things, ordered from a catalog that still lets you mail in a check. I liked the slow predictability of it. I liked that no one demanded a password to prove I was still myself. When I stepped out into the late afternoon light, I saw the car parked crooked across two spaces. Hers, that pale blue sedan Michael insisted she lease instead of buying outright. Because that's how smart people handle money, he said. I hadn't seen it in months, but my body knew it before my mind could catch up. My hand tightened around the paper parcel. My feet wanted to turn, to move back inside, but I didn't. I just stood there. She was pacing by the driver's side. Door? Holding something, a paper bag maybe, or a parcel of her own. Her eyes were darting up and down the street like she didn't quite believe where she was. Like she dropped a needle and was trying to find it in gravel, and then she saw me. Her mouth parted, but no sound came out. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not younger, just deflated. Like some of her shine had been pressed out. I wondered if she saw the same in me. I hoped not. She took a step toward me, then paused, then took another. I didn't move. "Hi," she said. The word fell like a coin into a dry well. No echo. "Just wait." I nodded. That was all. She hesitated, then held the bag out toward me. "I brought you something." "From home?" "Just some things I thought you might want." She didn't use the word need. That, at least, was progress. I took the bag more out of habit than intention. It was light. Inside, I later found a scarf I hadn't worn in years. A ceramic dish from the kitchen windowsill and a book of poems my mother gave me on my 40th birthday. Nothing important? Not really. But not nothing. I've been. She started, then faltered. "I've been trying to understand." She looked at me like that sentence should earn her something. I didn't respond. She rushed in. The way people do when silence makes them nervous. "I didn't know you were feeling that way. That you were planning to leave. You didn't say anything." I said what I needed to say. You didn't hear it. That was the closest I came to raising my voice. And even then, it was quiet. Like a dropped pin. She winced. Not dramatically. Just a small shift in her jaw. She had expected sorrow. Maybe guilt. Maybe some cathartic embrace. I gave her neither. "You scared me," she said. And then, after a breath, "You hurt me." That was the moment I knew she still didn't understand. "I didn't leave to hurt you," I said. "I left because you were already erasing me. I left while I still had something to carry." She looked down at her shoes, the same ones she wore to her baby shower, scuffed now. "The lace is uneven." "I thought we were helping." That word again. "You were helping yourselves." "Feel better about ignoring me?" She started to speak, then stopped. Her mouth closed around the words like she tasted them and found them bitter. "I'm not asking you to come back," she said. "I know that's not. I just want you to know I didn't mean for any of it to go that far." I nodded again, a long, slow nod. I wanted to tell her that meaning well means nothing when the impact buries a person. That you can kill a voice with soft hands and good intentions. Instead, I said, "You always loved the idea of me more than the truth of me." She flinched. That one landed. I didn't want it to be cruel. It's just true. A pause stretched between us, full of everything we weren't going to fix. "Do you hate me?" It was so small, that question. So afraid. "No," I said. "I just don't need to be where I'm not safe anymore." That answer didn't comfort her. But it wasn't for her. I stepped around her slowly, the bag still in my hand. I walked past the car, down the sidewalk, toward the motel. She didn't follow. That night, I sat on the bed with the bag beside me. I unpacked it slowly, ran my fingers along the spine of the poetry book, turned the dish over in my hand. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt clean. Closure isn't loud. doesn't arrive with applause or violins. It arrives like this soft, tired final dot. She had come looking for forgiveness, maybe, or a door cracked open. I had none to offer, not out of malice, but because peace, once found, can't be negotiated. It's a one-way gift. I went outside for air, sat in the plastic chair with a cup of tea, and listened to the cars hum past in the dark. Inside, the scarf she brought sat draped over the corner of the lamp. The next morning, I left it at the laundromat, folded neatly with a note that said free to a good home. Some things are meant to go forward, not back. There's a quiet that lives in me now. Not the kind born from silence, but the kind born from surviving it. I don't reach for the phone anymore. Not to check messages, not to reread what was said, not to scroll through old photos wondering where the shift began. It doesn't matter. Now, the story has moved on, or maybe it's just settled. Like dust after a storm. Most mornings, I wake before the sun. I sit by the window in the motel room, legs tucked under me, wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of laundry soap and distant memory. I drink my tea slowly, holding the warmth in both hands. I don't rush anything anymore, not even thought. This morning, a letter came. Not from Alina, not from anyone I used to know. It was from the library, a thank you note. Apparently, I donated a box of books last week. I'd nearly forgotten. They said they especially appreciated the poems. That someone had already checked. Them out. It made me smile. That small life can still ripple outward. That a book once given in love, then carried through disappointment, could find a third home and still matter. I've begun measuring my days in these small things. The way the light shifts across the carpet at noon. It's the man at the corner store who sets aside the crossword puzzle insert for me. The way Nadine laughs before she speaks, as if everything might be funny if we're brave enough. She told me once that she envied my calm, that it felt like I knew who I was, even after being unraveled. I told her it wasn't knowing, it was choosing. Every morning I choose myself, even when no one else is looking. There's power in that. I didn't know. When I left, if I'd last a week out here, I didn't know if this silence would drown me or carry me forward. But it's done both in its own strange way. It swallowed the noise that used to define Mitha shoulds, the guilt, the roles too heavy to name. And then it opened its arms and said, now start again. So I did. I've started baking again. It's just simple things. Banana bread in a borrowed pan. Scones with too much cinnamon. I bring them to the motel office sometimes. Leave them by the coffee machine with a little note. Help yourself. No charge. Just kindness. I never sign my name. I like the idea that kindness can come from nowhere and still be real. Sometimes people knock on my door to say thank you. I smile and nod and close it gently. Not because I don't want to talk, just because I like the boundary. I never knew I was allowed to have them before. Boundaries that weren't punishments, but protections. One afternoon, I walked by a mirror in the motel hallway and didn't recognize myself just for a second. Not because I looked older, but because I looked settled. The lines on my face weren't questions anymore. They were answers. They said I had lived and lost and learned to be okay. I don't expect Alina to understand. Not now. Maybe not. Ever. I think that's the part no one warns you about in motherhood. The letting go that doesn't come with a hand to hold or a tearful goodbye. Just a slow, necessary release. She may tell people I disappeared. She may say I changed, that I was unwell, that I broke something between us that she can't fix. But I know better. I didn't break anything. Stop carrying what wasn't mine. I didn't vanish. I simply stepped out of the frame they kept putting me in. The last thing did before leaving the house was pull out the spare key I'd hidden years ago. The one they never knew about. Held it in my hand, turned it over once, and then set it on the windowsill. I didn't take it with me. Didn't need to. Some part of me thought I might come back one day, but I might miss the garden, the scent of my old kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator at night. But the truth is, you don't miss a place that stopped being yours. You miss the idea of it. And once you see that clearly, it stops calling to you. I'm not angry anymore. That's the strangest part. The fire that used to sit in my chest has cooled 2 embers. I keep it there for warmth, not war. I don't need revenge. I don't need anyone to regret what they did. I only needed space to exist without being explained. And I have it now. I've thought about writing myself a letter not to send. Just twofold and keep. A record, maybe, of this new woman I've become. A quiet declaration. I imagine it would read something like this. You are not invisible. You are not just what you've given away. You are the whole story, not just the pages others chose to bookmark. You can leave and still love. You can be gone and still whole. You can be forgotten and still matter. You survived. You started over. You are still here. Tonight, I'll go down to the lake. The motel isn't far, just a few blocks. I'll bring the paper I wrote that letter on. I'll fold it into a boat, like I used to do for Alina when she was small and bored in church pews. I'll place it on the water and watch it float. And when it sinks, I won't rescue it, I'll let it go. Because this time, I don't need anything to drift back to me. This time, I decide who gets to call me anything else.